and get underway. My name is Hugo Armstrong and I've been asked to chair the meeting tonight. I'll be doing my best, as all good chairs do, to be as discreet and out of sight as possible, and I hope I'll have every opportunity to do that and allow the people who really know what they're talking about the greatest opportunity to be up on their feet. Please note that tonight's meeting is going to be recorded, and we also have some media here as well, so just understand that everything is very much in the public arena. I'd like to welcome a number of people. First of all, Stephen Cooper, behind me just here, who'll be our main speaker tonight. Stephen is, of course, the principal of the acoustic group and the author of the report that we're here to discuss. I'd also like to welcome a number of Pacific Hydro representatives. Lane Crockett, the Executive Manager for Australia, is there. Others who are here include Rachel Watson, Andrew Richards, Krista Kim, Michelle Kelly and Remy Gordon. We do have a couple of members of parliaments here. Dr Dennis Napthine, the local member from the Victorian Parliament, the lower house, and Senator John Madigan. I saw over there before, but where are you, Senator Madigan? There he is down the back there, down from Canberra, so we welcome you too. We also welcome members of the Consultative Committee who are involved with the genesis of this particular report, and of course the residents directly involved with the study. Now, in terms of housekeeping, a couple of things. The exits are there. I dare say, as a bloke from out of town, you people have a better idea where the toilets are than I do, but I'm pretty sure they're out the door and down that way. There is tea and coffee to be had, so do help yourself to a brief refreshment during the meeting, and we do hope that afterwards there'll be the opportunity for further refreshment, more tea and coffee, and a chance to speak with a number of the speakers. Mr Cooper's report was recently publicly released and has been distributed to all parties. The study was commissioned and paid for by Pacific Hydro as a result of discussions through the Community Consultation Committee. The acoustic group was selected by the residents, and full access was provided by all parties involved to the properties, the wind farm itself, and to relevant data. There will have been, as I'm sure you will have seen, extensive media coverage in the last month, reflecting, perhaps as you would expect, a range of views. Pacific Hydro sent the report off to be peer reviewed, and the results of that process will be made available in due course. The purpose of tonight's meeting is to have Mr Cooper present the findings of the report. It is a very substantial and technical document. I think one of the participants in the study summed it up when they said acoustics is another language, and they were pretty right. So it certainly warrants explanation and the opportunity to ask questions. This is not a decision-making meeting. It's not to decide the merits or otherwise of the findings, to decide or plan future activities, and it's not a forum for commentary on the report of the wind farm itself. It is about a presentation and about questions. As far as the order of tonight's proceedings go, we'll hear a presentation from Mr Cooper, including some slides. Please can I ask you to keep your questions to the end. We did also request questions in advance in order to allow Mr Cooper the chance to review them and to respond effectively. So after his presentation, we'll go through as many of those questions as we can. We would also like to allow a small amount of time for questions from the floor. Hopefully most of the questions that may be in your mind now will be answered through the course of the presentation, but if there are other matters, then we'll have that opportunity. When we get to that stage tonight, there's a microphone over here, so we'll get you to, if you want to ask a question at the end, you just come up and queue over here and ask your question from there. Our meeting's scheduled to end at 9:30, and shortly before that, I'll ask Lane Crockett from Pacific Hydro to give a closing statement and a vote of thanks. Now, I'd now like to read a joint statement from Pacific Hydro and the acoustic group. In 2014, Pacific Hydro commissioned the acoustic group to undertake an acoustic study at the Cape Bridgewater wind farm. The report, which was the culmination of this study, was publicly released on the 21st of January of this year. The report has generated a substantial amount of interest from both the media and the public. While we understand that some of the technical aspects of the study may be difficult to understand, both Pacific Hydro and Stephen Cooper have been concerned and disappointed with some of the public commentary about the report and some of the media reporting. Therefore, Mr Cooper and Pacific Hydro have provided this joint statement that they hope will clarify a number of aspects of the study and the report. Pacific Hydro's brief to the acoustic group was to see whether any links could be established between certain wind conditions or sound levels at Cape Bridgewater and the disturbances being reported by their 6 local residents. The study did not require evaluating acoustic compliance with the permit conditions, as this had already been established by others. The acoustic group at Pacific Hydro agree that the study was not a scientific study. They also agree that the report does not recommend or justify a change in regulations. The acoustic group at Pacific Hydro agree this was not a health study and did not seek or request any particulars as to health impacts. Therefore, we cannot enter into a debate about health issues or health impacts that have been raised in the media and the written questions. We note that a recent National Health and Medical Research Council statement indicates that they will be conducting further work in this area, which may well be an appropriate place for rigorous health research to take place in the future. From the outset, Pacific Hydro required that the study be transparent and acknowledged that the cooperation between the parties was paramount. The study had a limited budget and time frame, which was exceeded. A lot more work than originally envisaged was required to satisfy the brief. The acoustic group was engaged as the sole participant in the study. The draft report from the study was provided to residents and Pacific Hydro before it was publicly released. Both Pacific Hydro and Mr. Cooper agree that the study is a new approach to assessing the acoustic environment as it relates to wind turbines. It involves a number of hypotheses that are yet to be fully tested and contains information that may prove useful as the basis for future study. The study clearly states that no correlation has been found with standard acoustic parameters versus the wind farm, but the report suggests a correlation of some parameters versus wind speed. 3 findings have to date been the subject of debate. The study indicates residents' observations in relation to sensation followed a pattern related to certain operations of the wind farm that can be related to wind speed. A hypothesis of certain wind farm operations versus high sensation severity was proposed and then investigated with respect to narrowband measurements results. Based on the hypothesis proposed by Mr. Cooper, the study indicates, on the basis of limited data, that the narrowband infrasound results agree with spectra obtained for other wind farms and from the Cape Bridgewater farm. This limited data exhibits a trend in line with concentration on sensation severity 5, adapted from the AECOM audible noise ranking system. Mr. Cooper has nominated such a level as a worst case scenario and has suggested a new weighting parameter of dBWTS with an unacceptable level assigned to the data. I'm sure I'll explain exactly what that means. Both Pacific Hydro and Mr. Cooper agree that the results of the study identify that further study is required to obtain a rigour that would withstand scientific scrutiny, and that would go well beyond the scope of work. Both Pacific Hydro and Mr. Cooper agree that the outcome of the study can lead to further discussion amongst the community, regulatory authorities, planning authorities, other researchers and the wind industry. This is the point that we're at tonight, and where we'll explain what has been done to date so as to move forward into those discussions. That's the end of the statement. So let's now welcome Stephen Cooper to the microphone to present a description of the project and its findings. I shan't read you his biography or qualifications, as you can find those professional details on the Acoustic Group's website. I'll simply note that, as we've said, the Acoustic Group was accepted by all the parties. As mentioned, please keep your questions till afterwards. If you have a particular problem with a particular term, then I don't mind a quick, what's that mean? But we don't have the time to let Stephen get too far off track in this presentation. There's a lot of ground to cover. And of course, there is the opportunity to ask submitted questions at the end. So thank you very much. Stephen, over to you.
The study represented 7 months of my life, and it was every single day for those 7 months that I worked on it. So I too am very pleased to be here tonight to present to the people that have been involved in the study and others that have followed it. How I came to get to this position actually started 2.5 years ago in Portland. I was invited by Senator Madigan and Xenophon to come and talk at a public meeting in Portland, and Lane was there as well, although I did most of the talking, which some people say is usual. After the talk, which was expressing the work that I'd been doing for a number of years at wind farms, I'd been to residential properties, I had found some signals that didn't come up in the general DBA number. And so I had some concepts that were there and I explained it. After the talking of questions that were given through the meeting, I had 2 slides that answered some questions where I thought things were going to go. So we go to the next one. I found that if we wanted to get to the bottom of noise impacts, we needed a 2-stage approach. The first one is a bit like the tail wagging the dog. It started from the acoustic side. See if we can find something that's identifiable as that from the wind farm. And we had 2 parts. One was acoustic measurements, which is what I've done in this case. And the second part was a psychoacoustic assessment. That means people that are trained in looking at how people react to the noise and what it means, they would then have that link. It's been done for aircraft noise and road traffic noise. Now, Dr. Bob Thorne's done that down here at Cape Bridgewater and included some of the same houses I went to. With step 1, then we could move on to step 2, which was a multidisciplinary approach. And what that meant is you have all these different types of doctors. People who are not qualified in acoustics, but they take the acoustic signal and away they go. So it's a concept that I had here in Portland 2.5 years ago. And in late 2013, I got a call from Lane and said he wanted to see me. And I said, wait a minute, you're Pacific Hydro and I've been doing this stuff. And he said, look, we really want to look at this, and you've had a concept which is not DBA, but you've been consistent for a couple of years and we'd like to have a talk. So I didn't have a problem, and we talked, and he conveyed to me that there was a genuine desire by Pacific Hydro to go and look at this. We don't know what we'll find, but would I be interested? So I came down to Portland and then out to Cape Bridgewater, and we went and visited the 3 houses and the residents there. And the we was me and Pacific Hydro. And we talked and we looked at the spots and we found out what was going on. And then that night I went to a community consultative meeting. And I said, look, I think this is what you need to do to get data. Now, and I said then, it's a very good step for Pacific Hydro, and whoever gets the job, because I didn't think it was me, they're going to have some interesting data. Well, lo and behold, 2014, they came back and said, you got the gig. And, well, we got stuck into it. So, if we go to the next one, clarification of the study. Now, some of this has already been covered in the opening statement, but it's very important. And the one that I want to stick to for everybody is the brief. Because there's a lot of people that have put questions tonight and statements in the paper and they haven't seen what the brief is. The brief was to determine whether certain wind conditions or certain sound levels give rise to disturbances experienced by specific local residents at Cape Bridgewater. That's what it was, that's what the consultative committee was told, and it was 6 residents, 3 houses. That's what it's been right from the start. So if you can see the screen, you can read the other bits and pieces about what it's not in terms of what's being assessed. Just when we get down to looking at impacts of quality of life, there's 2 different concepts. There's one that people might think in terms of medical concept, which was outside our expertise, but there's another concept from a socio-acoustic concept. It's outside of my expertise, but that was the stuff that Bob Thorne did. So we didn't have any external peer review. I've got 2 professors and 4 PhDs looking at my report at the moment, doing reviews, and I've got some pretty good statements. Congratulations. I've got some said, oh, the vibration should have been done a bit more, but we ran out of time. And money, of course. And the report says it didn't include the permit conditions, and people have gone on about that compliance testing. And in the end, it's my opinion that using WTS, we have a concept that identifies a wind farm, and it will lead to what I've called step 2 in discussions. Next. Okay, for people that don't know the area, in some documents it says the wind farm's in 2 different sections. I called it 3, southern end, middle and northern end. There's some expanded views in a sec, but what we actually did is we did a number of things that involved the residents trying out before we started. We had 3 loggers, unattended machines, set out in a row from the southern area, and they ran for a few days to do testing that I'm going to talk about. We had 2 up in the top section, and the houses that are located, House 87, House 88 and House 89. Now 87 and 88 are influenced by the southern part of the wind farm, and so it becomes House 88 and 87. The numbers are that high because there are studies that have used these houses with different numbers. So we went all the way up to get out of confusion, and these are the turbines, and so we have 29, the numbers shift back a bit, 27, 15, 14, 13, and there's a substation put in here. This is the southern end, and so we actually went to turbines, hugged them, said hello, we're here to do some measurements, and that's what we did. Next one. Turbines that were considered. The reason why I'm pointing out the southern and northern parts is that in my analysis I related power output of the turbines and wind to those turbines. So there's no point saying this is what happens over the whole site when I'm looking at an area, particularly as the weather masts don't necessarily cover what we're doing. For House 89, we've got an ocean out here, and with a westerly we find that turbine 1 is the audible issue at the house, but on a southerly, turbine 3. So it varies and you can get on different sides of the house. I'm going through at a pretty fast pace because I've got a lot of slides. You can read all that about the study process if you're quick. The thing was that there were diary observations. Now, the residents were filling out diaries. They tried it before the start, and they would provide outputs from this diary of their observations. They wouldn't know what the noise was doing, and they wouldn't know what the wind farm was doing, so they gave their results. We took noise numbers without knowing the observations and without knowing what the wind farm was, so we got that data on its own. The wind farm, it just kept on operating, and they gave us the data, and they didn't know what the residents were doing, and they didn't know what we were doing. So we got all that data together at the end, and that's how we worked on it. So we had 3 streams of data coming in separately, no interreaction, which there are some questions asking about that. I said we had unattended loggers. These are just dumb machines that sit there and record numbers. That's all it is. Then we had a multi-channel system, which was doing 18 channels of noise and vibration. It started off at House 87 for a few days and nights, then it went to House 88 for a few days and nights, then it went to House 89 for a few days and nights, and then back to 87 for about 6 weeks. There was a lot of work in doing it. The way it worked out, I was the only one allowed on the site, so it took me 7 hours to pull the gear down, transport it and re-put it up. And it was a hard gig, I can assure you. The unattended loggers that we had were trying to do full spectrum. We tried to get WAV files in 1/3 octaves, but we ended up having a whole pile of USBs burnt out in sticks and memory cards. We had one meter go back to the manufacturer and they said the coils on the USB board had been burnt out. So these loggers weren't connected to the power, so they were solar and battery, and there were some problems, whether it's electromagnetic radiation, I don't know. Nobody else has had this. But for other researchers, I say earth your microphone and earth your solar panels if you're going to do this again.